Welcome back to Katana TCG. In this week's early deck preview, we're going to be looking at Darkrai VSTAR. Let's go. When it's time to flex on your opponents in Top Cut this season, or even just upgrade your TCG accessories, make sure you're checking out inkgaming.com. They have a wide variety of custom playmats, custom dice bags, face masks, as well as mouse pads too, and a grip of sleeves and dice and deck boxes, all your TCG accessory needs. And you can use the code DADSPOD10 at checkout for 10% off your entire order from inkgaming.com. Your game, your style. Out of all the lists that we have playtested on tabletop here at Katana TCG, I really think that Darkrai has been one of the reoccurring competitors that has shown a lot of potential. It has an unlimited damage ceiling. Granted, you are limited on how much dark energy you can play, but I think that there is a lot of potential for Darkrai to be a very competitive deck in the future and kind of gatekeep the format in terms of swinging for specific weaknesses and not really having its own demanding weakness in turn. Darkrai V with an HP of 210 and a weakness 2 grass and a 2 retreat cost. Pretty good. I think that its weakness is incredibly reasonable. We are getting a lot of grass support in the future. Check out my Lilligant VSTAR list for a kind of preview of all the grass support we're getting. But for one darkness and one colorless, you do Dark Wind for 50, which is pretty good. We have things like Dark Patch in the format allowing you to kind of get this attack off on your first turn going second. And then for 2 darkness and 1 colorless, you do Dark Hole for 130, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now asleep. Asleep is kind of powerful. It's not quite as good as Paralysis. However, I think that it's nice that it has a secondary effect as a V attacker. Darkrai VSTAR is where we're living though. 270 HP darkness Pokemon, and for 2 colorless, Dark Pulse does 30 damage. This attack also does 30 more damage for each darkness energy attached to all of your Pokemon, and we have so many dark partners in this format, allowing us to kind of get a lot of energy in play in one turn, which is really cool. And the ability Dark Abyss, during your turn, you may search your discard pile for up to 2 item cards and put them into your hand. This is like playing 6 Dark Patch. This is like playing 6 Crushing Hammers. This is the ability to go grab cross switchers if you needed them. I really do like Dark Abyss. I think that this is one of the most powerful VSTAR abilities or VSTAR powers we've had in the format. Also weak to grass, 2 retreat cost, pretty busted. I really do like this card. I think Darkrai VSTAR is going to be competitive right out of the gate. Galarian Moltres V. Because the name of the game is to have a bunch of darkness energy in play, the Dire Flame Wings ability really plays into that archetype really well. Once during your turn, you may attach a darkness energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon. You can't use more than one Dire Flame Wing ability per turn, so you can't have multiple Galarian Moltres set up, but the difference between hitting for 90 damage and hitting for 120 is one Dire Flame Wings away, and that is really cool. And it's also a great secondary attacker for 2 darkness and 1 colorless. It does Aura Burn for 190, and it does 30 damage to itself, which is kind of counterproductive. Obviously, you don't want lower HP than 220 because that's kind of the mark we need to be around right now with Arceus floating around. But I think that because we're mainly attacking with Darkrai, being able to recycle energy into play with Galarian Moltres V is super necessary. In my opinion, I really do think the baby Galarian Moltres plays into this archetype a lot heavier. Being able to accelerate up to 2 basic dark energy into play from your hand with Malevolent Charge on this baby Galarian Moltres is pretty sick. That's ramping up this Dark Pulse attack, 60 damage per Malevolent Charge. The Fiery Wrath attack is also pretty substantial for 2 darkness and 1 colorless. Fiery Wrath does 20 plus damage. This attack does 50 more damage for each prize card your opponent has taken. If your opponent has taken 5 prize cards, you now swing for 270, and that's without Choice Belt, and it's pretty busted. I really do like baby Galarian Moltres in this format. Regardless of its weakness, I think the Fiery Wrath attack is just super necessary in a format where the HP is coming down and the damage ceiling is coming up. We did elect to go with the Bidoof and Bibarel draw engine, I think because we play such a high count of Ultra Ball, and being able to discard Dark Energy and re-accelerate it back in onto our Dark Pokemon with Dark Patch. The discard engine works better than kind of going with something on Shady Dealings, and this is slightly future-proof. So there will be a couple things that we have to check out, like Marnie and Crobat, but other than that, the core of the deck still feels pretty future-ready. 1 Crobat V to draw cards, and it's just another dark Pokemon that we can attack with potentially as well. We did tech in one Pumpkaboo. Its Pumpkin Pit ability. When you play this card from your hand onto your bench during your turn, you may discard a stadium and play. Winning the stadium war is what it's all about. Turning off Dark Asset, turning off Dire Flame Wings, and turning off Dark Abyss with the Darkrai is kind of bad for the whole archetype, so I think that the Pumpkaboo is definitely necessary. And the Sparkling Greninja, allowing you to discard a basic energy from your hand and draw 2 cards, is pretty sweet. This triggers the Dark Patch engine that we can utilize. It allows us to draw cards, and when it comes to what is more powerful in terms of Radiant Pokemon to put in this list, I think Greninja is my guy. 4 Quick Ball, 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Dark Patch. This is a new card that comes out in Astral Radiance. We talked about this in the Samurott list, but we'll go into it again. Attach a Dark Energy from your discard pile to one of your benched Darkness Pokemon. Very, very important because we play so many dark Pokemon. We are allowed to accelerate so much. This turns, an empty attacker onto a fully loaded attacker in one turn. We have the Dark Abyss ability on Darkrai, allowing us to go grab these Dark Patch out of the discard pile and reuse them. Super busted. I really, really like the addition of Dark Patch in this format, and Darkrai just gets a huge boost from something like this. 1 Escape Rope, because being mobile is also necessary. 1 Air Balloon for the same reason. Typically, we're going to attach this to something like the Bidoof and Bibarel as your pivot card. 2 Choice Belt. Math fixing is what it's all about. Doing an additional 30 damage to your opponent's Pokemon V is very, very necessary in the next format. 3 Boss's Orders. 3 Professor's Research, because drawing cards is good. 2 Clara. I typically would only run 1, but because I like reutilizing the Galarian Moltres, especially the baby version, it's going to be necessary to, buff that damage up by 60 every turn. And if you can Clara to do an additional 60 damage, you're in better shape for it for sure. 1 Raihan, it accelerates an energy from the discard pile, which plays heavily into the archetype's favor, and lets you go grab something out of your deck. I think it's perfect in this format. 1 Marnie, which seems a little funky, but I think just a little bit amount of opponent manipulation is going to be necessary, and it won't feel so bad in the next format when we unfortunately don't have Marnie unless it gets reprinted. But we do play a Roxanne. You can only play this card if your opponent has 3 or less prizes remaining. Both players shuffle their hands into their decks. I get to draw 6, they get to draw 2. Make sure you boss the Bibarel if you're going to Roxanne, if your opponent has a Bibarel in play, because this will be for nothing if they can draw an additional 3 cards. But super necessary. It's like a baby N, and I think it's super circumstantial. 2 Training Court, because this allows us to get the Fiery Wrath attack off in one turn. It allows us to win the Stadium War, and accelerating energy into play and having it be mildly recyclable is core to this archetype. And a whopping 13 Dark Energy. This is probably the most energy I've played in a deck since Welder. Playing 10 Dark Energy allows you to body VMAX with Darkrai. Playing more than that allows you to prize some and still hit that VMAX marker, and that's what's going to make this deck important. It's one of those archetypes where early in the game you may not be swinging for a lot of damage. Darkrai VSTAR as well as Darkrai V can get you in positions to really take future knockouts, but I think this is a late game deck, and I think games are going to go longer, especially with Shady Dealings going away. And I just think that opens up the window for Darkrai to be incredibly powerful in late game situations. A subscriber had asked me to rank the good and bad matchups of these decks when I do the early deck preview, and this is kind of how we're going to do it going forward. I've categorized a lot of what I think are going to be the best decks in the future format, and you'll notice in the good matchup category, 3 of the best decks in the format in the form of Arceus Duraludon, as well as Mew, all lie up there. Specifically the Mew, because you're swinging for weakness and you have the ability to get bigger over time without giving up a tremendous amount of assets. Swings the price trade very heavily in your favor to Fiery Wrath late game and take knockouts on Mew. Also has the ability to clap things like Genesect and Meloetta early in the game because you are swinging into weakness and you're swinging for a lot of damage. The Duraludon matchup is very winnable because we don't play any special energy. We have the ability to recycle all of this basic energy in play. Duraludon does swing for 250 with Choice Belt, which is problematic, but I think late game being able to swing for VMAX numbers is what makes Darkrai a little bit better in that situation. Typhlosion's not a threat. It doesn't set up very well. and it is week 2 Dark, which sucks. We set up quite a bit faster than the Alga VSTAR. I think the Alga VSTAR has a place in the format. I just don't think Darkrai is going to be a good matchup for it. Charizard does swing for a whole bunch in the form of 270 with damage counters on it, but I think putting damage counters onto Charizard makes the game a lot more winnable for Darkrai, given that it has to swing for less, and accelerates energy quite a bit faster than the Arceus Charizard matchup happens. And I think that straight Arceus and Teleon's game plan is to make the games last a little bit longer, and I think that's going to prove problematic for Arceus because they are only taking 2 prizes at most at a time, don't have any bench sniping ability, and over time Darkrai gets quite a bit bigger faster. And I think in late game scenarios, after your opponent has played a couple Sharon's Care to avoid those 2-hit knockouts, Darkrai is going to be able to come in with 1-hit knockouts and so on and so forth. When it comes to the 50-50 matchups, I don't think Entei is consistent enough to really be that problematic. The Mightyena Stage 1 box I think might be somewhat 50-50 because they do play the Grass form Atom, and that is problematic for us. And the Golisopod as well for a short period of time is going to be a hard lump to kind of get over, especially only taking 1 prize at a time. Those tend to be very long-lasting games, and I think in a best of 3, the Stage 1 Mightyena box would be a little problematic for us. Hisui and Decidueye, I don't really see any advantage it has over Darkrai, given that it doesn't swing into weakness, and it needs to discard things to become powerful. It benefits from double turbo energy, but that means it'll be 2-shotting us where we have the ability to 1-shot very easily. Whimsicott really punishes decks for putting down special energy. We don't play any special energy, so I think that that's very winnable for us. The mirror really boils down to who's playing the Baby Galarian Moltres, and if they're able to accelerate more energy into play with Malevolent Charge early. We do play the Pumpkaboo, which helps in the mirror, because if we can deny them the training court to be able to pull off Fiery Wrath in 1 turn, or even just accelerate that 1 extra energy, we fix that math. Malamar sucks, but we do swing for weakness, so that's very winnable as well. And the Starmie Frostmoth box only is going to last for a little while, but they play our game very similarly. They just don't have the same recyclable engine that we have, so I think that Starmie is a little bit more winnable. We do benefit from having additional bench Pokemon, which is why I think that the Suicune matchup is harsh on us. It's not useful for us to have only one thing in the active because the Turbo Patches only accelerate to the bench, as well as having other things like the Beebrill and the Greninja utility. We do get punished for having bench Pokemon, so I think because of the consistency of Suicune and because it capitalizes on us having bench Pokemon, it is a bad matchup for us. Sylveon is going to be a better deck in the future. We don't swing into it for weakness, which is problematic for us. It puts Psychic in a better position to have attackers that are weak to Steel, given that one of the better Steel decks that's going to be in the format accelerates pretty slowly. I think Sylveon's going to get a buff from that for sure. It is a big lump for us to get over, and I think that it sets up pretty quick with the Rapid Strike engine, but I definitely think with Arceus, Sylveon has potential to take 1-hit knockouts on us very early in the game. Raichu does the same thing we do, but it has a Pokemon that accelerates energy into play as well as the Raihan engine and Arceus. So I think because Raichu has a higher damage output early game and a little bit more consistency in the form of Flaffy, it's going to be a hard deck for Darkrai to beat. Ice Rider Calyrex has a high damage output from the get-go, takes 2 energy to set up. I think that Ice Rider is going to be a problematic matchup for sure, but it's definitely winnable because of the late game scenarios that we can create. Jolteon plays a lot of Path to the Peak right now. I know it's losing its core in the form of Shady Dealings, but I think because of our baby Pokemon allowing us to have that extra support and additional energy acceleration, Jolteon's going to be less winnable for us. Rapid Strike Urshifu is a little bit less winnable too because it does have the ability to bench snipe a lot like Jolteon. Doesn't play Path, doesn't sneak into weakness, so I think it is definitely winnable, but I think Urshifu has so much utility now and there's so many different ways to play it that it's hard for Darkrai to really tech for the right matchup for that. And Hisui and Samurott is probably my favorite dark deck to come out of Astral Radiance. I think it's a little bit more consistent. I think early game you're able to torch Pokemon a lot quicker with Samurott, and I think Darkrai is going to have a hard time dealing with that. Darkrai's worst matchup consists of everything grass. There is no real weakness balance in this deck. I think Fiery Wrath can definitely take late game knockouts against any of the V-Stars, but I think that Leafeon VMAX is going to be a really difficult deck for us to kind of maneuver around. The one of Rope is not enough switch cards to kind of evade the Galarmine. I understand that it's Core and Shady Dealings and Teleon, as well as Galarmine are kind of leaving, but that doesn't mean that there isn't opportunities for Leafeon to still take advantage of things like Darkrai. Lucario is going to be a mad matchup for sure. It swings for 270 very consistently, very easily, with the attachment of one double turbo energy as well as Choice Belt. It is taking big knockouts very early in the game, and I think Arceus really accelerates that as well. It's too fast of a deck to really combat, and it punishes us for accelerating a lot of energy into play, even though it doesn't swing for weakness. Single Strike Urshifu with the Single Strike package swings for too much, too early, and has a really good energy accelerating engine. We do as well, but it has that 330 HP and is a little difficult to kind of leap over. Machamp VMAX swings for a lot of damage for 2 energy. Not really a good matchup for Darkrai whatsoever. Palkia VSTAR plays the same game we do, but has an ability that negates grabbing the items and just goes straight for the energy acceleration. So if it's playing something like Starmie, or if it's playing something like Ice Rider as a secondary, it's going to clap some Darkrai cheeks, and that feels real bad. And Gengar is just straight damage output, and I think because it sets up so quick and punishes us for putting V Pokemon in play, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to win that matchup. Dark decks have a tremendous amount of potential in the future, and I really do think that Darkrai is going to be one of those gatekeepers that keeps a lot of decks at bay, especially those weak to this specific typing. I hope you enjoyed my summary of Darkrai VSTAR and how I would play it in the next format. Be sure to like the video, comment which deck you'd like to see next week, and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. And follow me on Katana TCG on Twitch. We stream as often as we can and try to do as much Pokemon content as possible. Deuces.